The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question to the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session. It is January 20th, 2025, and I have a new president. It is Donald John Trump from the state of Florida and New York, and he was the president during the second half of my years in high school. I welcome him back, and I hope to God that he does live up to his promises on making America great again. I'll keep my expectations middle to low, though, because I don't really trust politicians that much in America, because I think they're all corrupt and crooked, but we'll see what happens. I just hope it's less shitty than the last 4 years. Anyway, let's look at the situation on the front. First of all, we're going to talk about Donetsk Oblast as a whole. Yes, VELYKA NOVOSILKA. It looks like the end is nigh for this town in southeastern Ukraine. VELYKA NOVOSILKA has held on for the last nearly 3 years since the initial start of the full-scale Russian invasion of the country. And it looks like the town is going to fall in the next 1 to 2 days. Maybe 3 days max, but VELYKA NOVOSILKA is at the end of the line for the Ukrainians. There's reports, especially videos circulating on Telegram and on Twitter X, that Ukrainians are trying to evacuate their men from this area and going west towards these villages here that border Zaporozhye and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. And it's a disaster, as you can imagine. A lot of Ukrainians are dying out here, which is very unfortunate. My heart goes out to all the families of the martyred soldiers. I definitely wish them no ill, despite the fact that I may disagree with them on many things. But, yeah, they're literally being grinded down, and it seems as if the only way that the Ukrainians will be able to evacuate VELYKA NOVOSILKA will be through the Mokry Yaly River, like swimming across it. And once all is said and done, rather they surrender or be deceased, the Russians will take full control of VELYKA NOVOSILKA and pretty much the entirety of the southern Donetsk Oblast. Nothing can pretty much stop them after that. The Russians will be at the border with Zaporozhye and Dnipropetrovsk in this direction. And once this happens, Ukrainian defenses are not going to really be able to stop the Russian onslaught. I mean, you got influencers like Artur Rihi, Jake Bro, Denis Davidov, reporting from Ukraine, etc., 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 all saying Russian economy is going to collapse. But let me tell you all this right now. They're all coping. They're all seething, molding, all of the above. They literally are unprepared for what is coming in 2025. And during Trump's inauguration address, he did not address the Russo-Ukrainian war in any way. He did not mention it at all during any time in his swearing-in address. If I were President Zelensky right now, I would be sweating a lot. Literally. He does not have much longer left, in my opinion. I think he has at least 1 to 2 years tops before he is either toppled or is forced to resign in some shape or form. His time is running low, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see his popularity sink even lower because of the recent territorial losses to Russia in 2025. And I think those territorial losses are going to be a mortal blow to his government and to the entirety of Ukraine as a whole. So yes, VELYKA NOVOSILKA is cooked. And yeah, let's move a little north east. So the Russians have pretty much cleared this whole pocket here, like south of Kharkov, and have taken full control of the dam and water reserve in this area. So this whole area is now under Russian control without any problems. So logistics-wise, the Russians can now travel down this road without any problems, along with this road here. I mean, logistics-wise, the Russians are now in very good position. And it wouldn't shock me at all if we see them move into Dnipropetrovsk Oblast in a matter of days, if not a matter of weeks or so from now. I mean, it's literally only a matter of time. I think the actual Russian entry into Dnipropetrovsk Oblast is going to be in February 2025, probably around the 3-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine. Well, this conflict, I mean, the general conflict in Ukraine has actually been happening now for nearly 11 years. But in the third year or third anniversary of the conflict, the Russians will enter Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and there's not really much the Ukrainians can really do to stop it. It's going to be a massive PR blow for President Zelensky, and a lot of Ukrainians will start to call for his head even more. But yeah, so the Russians have advanced a little up north towards the villages of Constantinople and Andriivka, though the Ukrainians have tried to counterattack in this area, but I honestly think in the long term it will prove to be futile. Dachny is still mostly under Ukrainian control, but I'm expecting them to evacuate this village here very soon, and they'll try to hold these 2 villages here, which are Oleksivka and Beheter, for as long as they can until Andriivka collapses, because as soon as Andriivka collapses, that's pretty much the ball game for the Ukrainians in southern Donetsk as a whole. I mean, I think it's already over after VELYKA NOVOSILKA collapses, in my opinion, at least, from a strategical standpoint. But Andriivka will be the final nail in the coffin for the Ukrainians in this area. And then, as you can all see, Slavianka and Peropavlivka's outskirts have been cleared, along with Shevchenko's. And also, the Russians have taken the village of Yasinove and are also advancing on the village of Novoandriivka. Russians are also beginning to battle it out for the village of Nadivka too, and if they're able to take this, they will then be pretty much going to be steamrolling across the way to the border of Dnipropetrovsk. They could either go northwest or just go straight up west and try to take the village of Kotlyrivka. And then after they take this, then yeah, it's all fair game in this particular province here. The Russians have also seized complete control over the village of Kotline, and by controlling this, the Russians have now partially encircled Pokrovsk, the city itself proper, partially from the west, and they are contesting for the town of Udachne at the moment. And once Udachne falls, then it is an absolute guarantee that the Russians will be at the border, if not cross into Dnipropetrovsk. And once they take Udachne, expect the Russians to try to make an advancement towards the village or town of Serhivka and the town of Hrishine, which will then encircle Pokrovsk completely from the west, and also it will give them a shot at encircling Pokrovsk from the north too, which would effectively cut all their supply routes into the city. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, looking at the videos that have been posted on Telegram by the Ukrainians, it doesn't look like there's many Ukrainian troops in Pokrovsk. It doesn't look like it. And the way I see it now, I can already imagine it in the next 1 to 2 months, maybe, just maybe. I might be very wrong in the future, but I wouldn't be shocked if the capture of Pokrovsk was a swift and quick capture, like Selidova was, like Ugledar was, during its final weeks. I really wouldn't be surprised if it felt the same way as those towns, and also like VELYKA NOVOSILKA here, which is in the process of being captured by Russia right now. Once Pokrovsk falls, then basically the gates of hell will bust wide open for Ukraine. And I honestly think that the Donald Trump administration knows this. They know that there's not really a lot of time left for Ukraine, and that there's pretty much little they can really do at this point to stop an imminent Russian victory in the country in some shape or form. There's literally not much they can do to save Ukraine. Really, nothing they can do. And yes, folks, your eyes are not fooling you. Most of the southern villages of Pokrovsk have been seized by the Russians, and there's even reports now that the Russians are about to enter Pokrovsk from the southern direction here, but I think they're going to enter it after they take the village of Zvirovy. Zurivi. I'm sorry if I cannot pronounce that. And then they also got to take the village of Leontovichi as well in order to enter Pokrovsk. Next up, we're also going to talk about the situation in Toretsk. Deep State has a big chunk of the city of Toretsk in a gray zone, but let's be honest, we all know the truth, especially with the geolocations provided by Creamy Caprice. The Russians essentially now control basically the entire city. Toretsk is commie blocks, its residential areas, its industrial zones, and the mine are now all coming under Russian control. And as a result, I think it's pretty much safe to say that by the time I make the next video, we're going to get an official announcement from the Russian government itself that Toretsk has fallen. And yeah, I think Toretsk has fallen to Russia. It's just we don't have any more like geolocations to prove that. But yeah, the city has fallen to Russia, and we can begin the countdown to the offensive that will be, I guess, west of Toretsk, which would be this area here, and also an offensive towards the city of Konstantinivka, which will effectively start the battle for the Slavyansk-Kramatorsk metropolitan area here, which is arguably the most defended area in the entire Donetsk Oblast by the armed forces of Ukraine. But to get to Konstantinivka, it's not going to be Toretsk that will be the key, it will be Chasiv Yar. And surprise, surprise, everybody, the Russians have made a huge and arguably decisive advance in the town of Chasiv Yar after pretty much 9 months of so of grinding their way. The town of Chasiv Yar and all of its heights are all coming under Russian control. The northern part of Chasiv Yar is now under completely Russian control. And the center of Chasiv Yar, we don't have any geolocations yet, but as far as I know, it looks like the Russians have taken these areas here. It's just that Syriac doesn't have enough evidence to back those claims yet. But we now have evidence that the Russians have taken majority of the town of Chasiv Yar. The northern parts are now under the control, along with the western part and the microdistrict, and they are also now balls deep in the center area as well. The industrial plant is now under the control, and a good chunk of the commie blocks are also starting to come under their control too. So the time, or I should honestly say, because I think I used the wrong word here, the clock is ticking for Chasiv Yar, and once Chasiv Yar falls, then expect the Russians to maybe go on a bit of a operational pause or something in this direction. But once they feel well rested and regrouped, they and their men in Toretsk city are going to begin a fresh push towards Konstantinivka, sorry if I made a slip up of the tongue, because let's be honest, I'm not really in the mood to make a video today, but I felt like it was my duty to inform you on everything that's happening on the ground. I mean, I get to do this every once a week or so. Most of the time I have fun, but there are times when I'm too tired, or I don't know, when I don't really feel like making the vids, but I'm doing this for you guys, and that's what matters. So yeah, the Russians are going to definitely do a push from Toretsk and Chasiv Yar, and I'm expecting them to target Konstantinivka. And if Konstantinivka falls, then basically the entire Slavyansk-Kramatorsk metropolitan area will be completely exposed. But that's not all. Now, getting away from that, Seversk, again, nothing burgers. Ah, yes, the Liman direction. Are we going to have round 3 and Liman soon? The way I see it, absolutely. The Russians have completely and finally captured the village of Terny from the Ukrainians after they defended this village for 2 years, and have also seized the village of Ivanovka. And with the taking of these villages, the Russians will be able to push towards Bilohorivka, Kolodazy, and Myern. And by taking these 3 here, the Russians will then begin the push proper towards Liman. But in order to take Liman, they also have to deal with these 2 headaches, Zarichny and Torsk, or Torske. if they can capture pretty much everything here in this area, Liman is going to fall to Russia again for the third time. And this time around, I don't think the Ukrainians are going to be able to recapture it like they did in 2022. Next time that the Russians take Liman, it may very well likely be for good. But we'll see. Time will tell. In the Lugansk Oblast, the Ukrainians are on their last leg here. They're down to, I think, one more village left. Rykivka is the final village in Lugansk Oblast that is still under the control of the Ukrainians. Oh, wait. Actually, never mind. Also, Novosilka. But yeah, folks, the Ukrainians are on their last leg in Lugansk Oblast. It will very well likely be, knowing the troubles they're having right now, the final curtain call for the armed forces of Ukraine in Lugansk Oblast. And once all of these remaining areas here are taken, the Russians will be rewarded with a big PR victory over the Ukrainians. And from that point on, they can then begin the push towards Borova in Kharkiv Oblast. And speaking of which, the Russians have completed their capture of Nadia, and as a result, they, can indeed begin the push towards Borova. So yeah, it's literally not that far away. It's a short drive away, and the Russians have also reportedly have conducted a counteroffensive north of the village of Krylykivka and have retaken some parts of Kolesnikivka. But other than that, though, the Kupiansk front in this part here is quiet. Nothing burgers and just a lot of meat grinding. But we got something interesting going on in northern Kupiansk direction. Or should I say the western Olsko River direction, more like. Apparently, reports have come out, and Deep State has now confirmed this, by the way, that the Russians have now seized majority control over the town of Dorichna. And by controlling this town, the Russians can then use this to basically go around Kupiansk, to besiege the town or the city. Now, the way I see it, I don't think the Russians are going to go for Kupiansk just yet. I think for them to do that, they got to make sure that they have everything north and west of them under their control. So this means that the Russians are definitely going to have to do a greater Kharkiv offensive, like another offensive, like in this area here. They got to retake essentially everything they lost in 2022 in order to do a proper offensive on Kupiansk and Izium. And without Kupiansk and Izium, by the way, the Russians are not going to be able to take Donetsk Oblast. It's just not going to happen. So they have to take Kupiansk, they have to take Izium, they have to take Volchansk, they have to take Dorichna, they have to take VELYKA Brulok, and they perhaps maybe got to go as far as maybe Chuagiv, or at least outside of it, like in the outskirts of Chuagiv. But if they can reverse everything they lost in September 2022, the Russians will absolutely be in a position where they'll be able to, I guess, maybe negotiate in a very strong position. And the Ukrainians may have no choice but to capitulate. But I honestly don't think they're going to, because they see any forms of concessions as weakness and as a form of surrender to the Russians. In the Kursk direction, the Russians are continuing to advance just a little bit. The Ukrainians have re-seized control of the village of Makhanovka and are also trying to counterattack in this direction too. But honestly, I think in the long term it's going to fail. And there's also now reports that the Russians are planning a limited operation in the Sumy Oblast too. And yeah. So that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you all found it informative too. And I will see you all next time. Stay safe and peace out. Bye.